Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee of San Clemente, Wednesday, July 9th meeting to order. Let's see. This is a new applicant, so we will read the preamble here. The purpose of the subcommittee is to provide direct insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not a reviewing body or an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator regarding a project's compliance with city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based upon written city design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will the members always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can then assess the input and incorporate any changes accordingly, with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, or modify a project are made by the Planning Commission, City Council, and/or Zoning Administrator, with input and recommendations from the subcommittee and city staff. The chair of the subcommittee will lead the discussions. Planning staff will be available to provide technical assistance as necessary. Time is limited. Consequently, the design review subcommittee will focus on the site and project design rather than on land use issues, which are the purview of the Planning Commission, City Council, and/or Zoning Administrator. We have one set of minutes to approve, the minutes of May 26, 2021 meeting. Do we have any changes or a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Wu, second by Blackwell. Take a roll count. Michael?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
And I also vote aye, so passes 3-0. We have one item of business today. The architecture review of the following items is cultural heritage permit 2374, minor exception permit 21001, demolition of historic property permit 21-095, Gonzalez residence, addition and remodel 329 Avenida Cabrillo. We have our planner, Mr. Carrillo, will be presenting it. And you have the floor, Dave.
Thank you, Bart. Just checking you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, very well.
Sweet. All right. So yeah, thank you guys. This is the Gonzalez residence. Let's see. Yes, it's located at 329 Avenida Cabrillo in the residential medium and coastal zone, and is also in the coastal exclusion order area. That means that this project won't be taken to the Coastal Commission for review and approval. So a little background about the property. It was built in 1926, and some reasons that it was listed in the list of historic resources was due to its association with the Spanish village period of development, the style of architecture, which is Spanish colonial revival, and then its association with Ole Hansen. We learned that Ole Hansen did live here prior to his home at Casa Aranska being completed back in 1928. There is a little bit of permit history in our records. The main one, the most notable, is a porch enclosure done in 1947. We can see that here on the right side of the home. And then there are other minor improvements as well that are highlighted in the staff report. There's also a Mills Act contract. The contract was approved in 2010. This is 11 years ago by City Council. The improvements are past due. The current owner bought the property without the previous owner completing any of the improvements. So the current owners have been working with staff to come up with a plan to complete all the improvements. So this project does include or proposes to complete all improvements listed in the contract. Staff will not be recommending that the contract be terminated as well. So again, the request involves 3 types of permits. The first one is a minor exception permit to continue a legal non-conforming side yard setback. That's along the east side of the property. There's a cultural heritage permit for a 1-story, 536 square foot rear addition. And then request to complete all Mills Act improvements. And the last permit is a historic demolition permit for a partial demo of a detached garage. So here's a site plan that shows the original or the current home highlighted in blue, the rear addition outlined in yellow, and the detached garage outlined in red. So part of that demo to the garage is to essentially downsize by 50%, and that'll accommodate a larger rear yard and then a future ADU. Just to give us a little bit of context here, so right now these pictures are viewed as if you're standing on the driveway looking east. This is the current home here. The addition would go along this portion. And then if you were to turn your head to the right, you'd see the detached garage here to the right. So here's the proposed, what is that? West elevation. So to the left of the red dashed line is the current home, and to the right of this dashed line is the proposed addition. So we see that they are compatible with the Spanish style of architecture. We have elements such as the 2-piece clay tile roof, white stucco, wood windows. On this elevation, we do have a recommendation that the window lintels be reduced in size so that there is some differentiation between the new windows and the old ones. And that's to better match or be better consistent with Secretary of Interior Standard number 9, which I'll go ahead and explain further. So another part of the project is again to partially demo the detached garage. This is one item from the Mills Act contract. This is item 19, which essentially says to restore, expand, or demolish. The property owner is deciding to go ahead and demolish the garage again to accommodate a rear yard and a future ADU. The applicant did hire GPA Consulting to prepare a memo, which is an analysis of the Secretary of Interior standards. And that memo concludes or summarizes that it does comply with all the standards. Staff also does have some recommendations for this improvement here. We do recommend that the wing walls along the left here and the right be reduced in height for some height variation. We do have a landscaping or landscape plan being proposed as well as part of the Mills Act improvement number 8. So currently, it does seem like the previous owner tried to address that item. However, there was no record on staff side that it was completed or inspected. So we do have a nice landscape plan that proposes Spanish colonial revival style elements, such as a fountain that matches a Casa Romantica. We have some hand-painted decorative tile, white walls. We have some, what are those? Yeah, Spanish style light fixtures and some pavers as well. There is a recommendation from staff that there are 2 species being proposed in the front that per plan will grow up to 6 feet. So staff is recommending that those species be replaced with another species that won't grow as tall to improve visibility of the home. So the applicant is also proposing a sidewalk with Ole Hansen pavers. This is consistent with section 12.08.030 of the municipal code, which basically says that homes west of the 5 can go ahead and install Ole Hansen paver sidewalks. We do have some special specifications that they would have to comply with, so we have provided that document in the staff report. There's also a condition that the engineering division will include once it goes to Planning Commission and City Council, which basically says that the applicant must provide, or the property owner must provide, a sidewalk easement unless a waiver is approved by the city manager. So the applicant would like this condition to be removed so they can keep the sidewalk per plans. And to the right is an idea of what that ADA compliant sidewalk would look like. So it would take away little of that wall that's being proposed in the front yard. Staff looked into the historical survey forms that we have for the property, and we did not find any integrity or any reason to keep those walls there. So we have no concerns with the sidewalk easement that will be provided if the condition is not removed. So staff is also asking the DRSC members to discuss this and provide any feedback on this topic. So again, going back to the Secretary of Interior standards, we do have that memo prepared by GPA that I sent to the subcommittee members via email. If you guys don't have that, I can try to send it to you guys right now again. But overall, it concludes that the project is consistent with the standards. And there are a few recommendations that I'll go over towards the end to improve the project's consistency with the standards. So based on our analysis, we concluded that the project is consistent with the design guidelines, general plan policies, the Secretary of Interior standards, that the project is in compliance with development standards, along with some design recommendations. I won't read off of the slide just to not bore you guys, but here are some regarding the windows, transom windows and lintels. The last one there is regarding the one I mentioned regarding the flanking wing walls on the accessory structure. We're recommending that those wing walls be reduced in height for some visual interest. We have the landscaping recommendation. The second bullet here is in regards to Secretary of Interior standard number 9. So we have a few options that we would like the applicant to consider to better meet that standard. That's the one that talks about new work being distinguished from the old. So 3 options are given there to the applicant. We would like them to consider one or all of these options here. And then the last recommendation was done by GPA. Let's see. It's recommending that the new openings do not mimic the beveled stucco surround so that we don't create a false sense of history. And that concludes the presentation. And I believe we have the architect. I think we have GPA here as well. And then we have Zach Ponton from engineering as well.
Thank you, David. The next step for this project is it Planning Commission or Zoning Administrator?
Planning Commission.
Okay, very good. Either Michael or Zen, do you have any comments or questions for the applicant or David?
Yes,
don't
I
at this
do.
time.
Go ahead, Zen.
I have 3 questions for David. The first simple question on the sidewalk waiver, who has authority? Is it a Planning Commission or city manager?
Hey, Zach, you want to chime in on that one so I don't misspeak?
Yeah, this is Zach Ponson with engineering. The discretionary hearing body, whoever it is, either ZA or planning commissioner, in this case, it sounds like it's planning commission, has the authority to waive the condition for the easement. But the decision, the condition is always added to every discretionary project. And our recommendation is keep the condition in there, and then if there is a waiver application later on, then the city manager can waive. As
Okay.
technically, the easement decision is up to the discretionary body. This particular case, if this was a normal waiver request, I don't see it meeting any of the requirements. There's no topographic issues. There's no major other issues that would prohibit this really going in without much effect other than moving the small wall over a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Because in the past, there was a project on La Cuesta. The applicant asked the planning commission to waive that easement. Then he got another shot with the city manager. He got denied both times. I think he actually appealed to city council. So 3 chances. I just want to make sure that that's the right procedure. Okay, thank you. A question for David. David, the applicant is asking for a minor exception permit regarding the side yard setback. So that has something related to non-conforming use, which from my understanding, because of the historic building, it is exempt from that division of the zoning code. But the minor exception permit says for new construction, it's up to 20% of the required setback, which here the 5. So 20% would be 1 foot. So the new addition if it were a new construction, it could be as close as 4 feet from the side property line. The applicant is asking to continue the 3 feet 6 inch setback from the side property line. There's a little bit ambiguity on the zoning code regarding minor exception permit applicability, whether the continuation of the non-conforming setback is about the literally continue the wall along the side of property line, or whether it's a continuance of a non-conforming status of the existing non-conforming structure while the new addition needs to stay with the zoning code. Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, Zen, that is good point there you're making. I see where you're coming from, but we have, and Stephanie can chime in just in case I get anything wrong, but we have been interpreting that the continuation is referencing the literal continuation of a wall and not just the legal non-conforming condition of an existing home. Stephanie, can you confirm that?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Okay, Michael?
No comments from me, Bart. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask planning staff, if the garage is removed and no existing walls are there, what are the required setbacks for an ADU?
I believe they're 4 feet now, 4 feet on side and rear.
Okay. I'm sure the architect has muddled this over because we've got the Mills Act requirement and historic. So one, it says they're supposed to complete the garage in the Mills Act, correct? David?
Yeah, one of the improvements, I think it's towards the end, is 19, gives them the option to restore, expand, or demolish with the city approved permit.
So what are they proposing to do? Are they going to complete it, restore it, or demolish it?
So it's a partial demo. with, I guess you can say, some restoration work. From my understanding, it's not a complete demo, and Rob, the architect, is available to answer some questions on that, but partial demo with some restoration or rehab work to bring it up to code.
I'd love to hear from the architect on his thought process on being able to keep the 0 setbacks on the front and rear, and how that's justified when they're demoing the building, or if it's a remodel. I don't think it's quite meeting the Mills Act. Is that correct?
If it's a remodel,
Yeah.
no, I mean, the Mills Act stated restoration, expansion, or demo.
Which doesn't sound like what's proposed. And I just want to see how now demo, they could come back and certainly do a ADU, but it would have to meet those other setbacks. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm disappointed that we didn't see the adjacent house on the upper side of this drawing. It's got, I believe, a conforming side yard setback back to about where this new addition is. And then it pops out and becomes something quite a bit less than, let's see, can I see it here? Yeah, on the right. So if we continue that setback back in front of their encroaching or legally non-conforming setback, those units are getting pretty darn close together. As far as light and ventilation for the other property owner, et cetera. And we're looking at giving an exception for them to do that. And I think Jen might be correct that 4 foot could be justified. I'd like to also hear your or the architect's justification for going to the 3.6, seeing as how our code is written.
Yeah, so we look at the intent, right? If they're providing that distance between exterior wall to property line, we feel that 3.6 is sufficient. We do also have building code being applied. So part of this process included the building division reviewing the project. So there are cases where they would recommend that 3.6 or a non-conforming setback is not sufficient for building code reasons. But in this case, they were in support of that. So that's part of our justification that it will meet building and safety code requirements. We also looked at the fact that it's a 1-story addition, not a 2-story addition, with an existing wall in the middle of the 2 properties.
Okay, I guess what I'm really saying is it's tough to make that call when we don't know where the adjacent property is located on that building. So I would like
so shown on plans, Bart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
And I'd like engineering to re-review it, or building to re-review it with that additional information. Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Well, let's give the applicant and their architect also an opportunity to present at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Rob. I'm with Studio 6 Architects. We're the architects. David Gonzalez, the owner, is also with me. So let me tackle the first question that comes along the non-conforming setback. You're correct. The existing house sits 3.5 feet today to the property line. The duplex next door, it's a brand new building. It's 2 stories. It's 5 feet off the property line. They built a brand new wall on their property line that sits 100% on their property line. So we have a clear 3.5 feet from our property or that new wall to the existing. So what we're doing is aligning the existing the new addition to the existing. So it's one, you know, we don't want to see a jog, you know, a 6-inch jog or a 1-foot jog on the side yard. Since we felt that we're a single story and we're aligning to 3.5 feet compared to, you know, maybe 4 or 5 feet, the guys next door, it's a brand new build. It wasn't a remodel, it's a brand new build, 2 stories, right next to a single story historic house. So based on talking with staff, talking with building department, engineering, they concurred that aligning the building, the new addition to the existing 3.5 feet, knowing that the other property is 5 feet, but it's 2 stories and we're single story, was something that they could support.
Very good. And also the ADU concern.
So
Your
one of the
thought
things
process there.
Sure. One of the things we looked at when we took on the project, obviously, my client inherited a Mills Act that was 10 years old that essentially very little was done during those 10 years. So we got an extension through the city on that to allow us to continue with this remodel that we're doing and complete all the Mills Act requirements as well as the other improvements to the property. Number 19, just like David spoke about, gives you a couple options: tear the building down or or fix it back up. Since the building itself, we looked at 2 different historic references, and nowhere did it mention a garage. It mentioned the house, had pictures of the house, but the garage, the detached garage, was never mentioned. Audrey from GPA found reference that the garage was added. Again, the building was built in 1927. The garage was built between 1938 and 1941. So GPA felt, based on the requirements of the Secretary of Interior, that the garage is not deemed historic because it was not built within the historic house. So she could justify that we could tear the whole thing down or refurbish it. What we did is we had an engineer, which was also a requirement by David, and also GPA, we had an engineer come out and take a look at it to see, you know, if we were going to try to salvage the garage, is it salvageable? And a good chunk of it is not, but there's probably about 50% of the garage that we plan on salvaging. And the engineer, when he was out there, we talked about that. So based on the code, the planning code, if we affect less than 50% of the structure, it's not considered a major remodel. So it can stay within the current setbacks. If it went beyond 50% and a total tear down, and then we went back and built the ADU, you're right. The new laws that went into effect this year, ADU says we can go 4 feet on the side and 4 feet on the rear. But we made the decision to turn into an ADU by salvaging more than 50% of the garage. That way it stays within the current setbacks that is there today.
Okay, very good. David, taking that concept and that approach, it seems that they aren't complying with the Mills Act completely, being that it's a partial tear down. Should the value of that, what was proposed, either redoing it, can that be assigned to some other improvements on the house than the garage? In other words, how do we get the contract to stay current and be correct, giving them that latitude of changing the garage? And I don't expect an answer. I think that's something that needs to be looked at and resolved for whoever is enforcing the Mills Act. But I believe that's planning.
Yeah, that'd be us. So the way you read that improvement is that if it's not a full demo, then we're not compliant with that improvement.
That item, and I'm just saying, could we give them authorization to transfer the Mills Act savings from not doing the garage to some other part of the project?
Oh, got it. So a change to the list of improvements.
Yeah, just to make everything above board and so there wouldn't be any inconsistencies there.
Got it. We'll look into that.
Because I know you can amend the Mills Act and what the work is that's being done up until the work's done, I believe.
Can I jump in real
David,
quick
this
on
is
that?
Audrey with GPA Consulting. Bart, thank you for having me here as well. I just wanted to speak a little bit to the Mills Act requirements. David, are you able to switch to the slide that shows the specific Mills Act item that we're referring to?
That's all I have.
Okay, you don't have the specific language. You know what? I think I
No.
have it right here. I just want to make sure that we have the specific language at hand.
And
So
the
it
reason
says,
I'm making this comment, so it makes it very clear, I just don't want to, I like what they're doing. I have no problem with that. I want to make sure that we don't trigger something that makes them, if they do the entire demolition, which totally complies with the Mills Act, they would have to comply with some other setback issues. But by only tearing down half of it, I want to make sure that's something that the Mills Act allows them to do. And if not, we need to do some paperwork to transfer and maybe give them that latitude.
Bart, I have extra questions to
Certainly.
David.
Go ahead.
David, regarding the garage, can you clarify or either confirm or deny? A garage conversion to ADU, which is existing non-conforming, and that's exempt from from the zoning requirement, is it?
Yeah, if it's a direct conversion from garage to ADU, you can keep the same non-conforming setbacks.
So the only difference here is that we demolished half of the garage and to keep the half of the garage as converted
Correct.
half of the garage into the ADU.
Correct.
Okay. Also, another question. For the applicant, did you talk to your neighbor about your reduced setback request to the city?
Did we talk to the neighbor, the duplex next door?
Yes.
I have not. David, have you? No, we have not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I real quick touch upon the front entry, the sidewalk?
Certainly.
Okay, so I've been going back and forth. Zach knows. I've talked to him a couple times. I've talked to David a couple times. So and I understand, we do a lot of projects in San Clemente. So I understand that, we go over $50,000 in improvements, which obviously this project does. The requirement is to put a 4-foot wide, ADA compliant sidewalk. Well, you can't put a compliant sidewalk all the way through a sloping driveway apron where down to the street, because that slope doesn't comply to the ADA code. So they have that easement that wraps around. Architecturally, and I've been talking to Jody Cook, who's the landscape designer on this. She's got the Ole Hansen pavers going all the way through, including the driveway apron. Right now, in order for us to, if we did it the way it's shown on this plan that David put together, we're going to go right into a side of a fence, a city sign, and a wall bush that's on the neighbor's side. And then they have no sidewalk there. So we're going to we put in an easement, we're going to be putting a sidewalk in that's going to go nowhere. Now, one day, maybe the house next door could do something, and then they could pick it up. So our point is, because what it's going to do, because we got the pilasters, the way the symmetry of this is set up, really tying into the historical references of the project, get rid of that column to put in something that would conform to an ADA in front of a historic that I think really does not justify what we're trying to do here. We spent a lot of time on this project to get this thing to this level. So, you know, we've been on this for over a year to get to the point where we are today. I just think that I would like to, I know Zach said that you guys could approve it, you know, move forward, planning commission, and ultimately we end up in city council. So after we're done with you guys, we go to planning commission. And after planning commission, we go to city council. So because city council has to step in when you're demolishing an historic or a portion of historic building. So they step in, even though the Mills Act says you can do it. I would really like you guys to consider us not having us put that easement up and around and to essentially nowhere. So that's just my take on it.
But I'm sorry to interrupt again. I have one more question for David. I just popped up and I forgot. David, if the garage were to completely demolished, will the applicant be required to provide a parking space?
No,
Even with this alteration?
correct. Yeah, replacement parking wouldn't be required.
Would it be required or not?
Would not. Replacement parking
Would not be required.
would not be required. Yeah, they'd be able to use the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's close the presentation portion and open it for public comment. And David, were there any public comment provided to the city?
No, I did not receive any.
So nothing from the historic committee or the adjacent. Were the adjacent properties noticed for any reason?
No, not yet.
Okay, and before let's go into discussion. The one thing as far as the applicant and architect, we are only recommending. You don't approve or say you can or cannot do anything. So we're kind of giving our best educated opinion on what will happen at the next two levels. And they usually listen to what we have to say. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, for discussion purposes, we haven't heard from Michael in a minute. Michael, would you like to start?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you. I'll go ahead and just comment on the project overall. I think it's a good one. I can appreciate all the work that went into this, and it's not easy working with standards from yesteryear and trying to fit it into today's standards and still maintain the integrity of a structure, the architectural integrity, I should say. I really, from a design perspective, aesthetically, I like the details that are being proposed. I think it's well thought out. I think staff did a good job working with the applicant and bringing it to this level. Landscape plan's fantastic. I think it's going to work well, and I appreciate the changing of the plant material. That canopy height, it's going to be, the maturity height is going to be important for this. So I appreciate David, putting attention on that, and I'd like to see more of that going forward. The staff, would really put some thought into the mature landscaping, what the stuff's going to look like at the end of the day, after 10, 15 years. It's really important. And I think that thought was well placed here. Again, landscape plan, well done. I got to applaud the designer on this one. The easement, I'm kind of with the applicant on that. I understand we have a standard, but that's really part of what we're doing here is consider, the uniqueness of every project. And I just don't see the point in encumbering, parking for a pathway to nowhere. And, it's been argued in the past that, we never know what's going to happen next door. And we're thinking ahead. I know sometimes it's outside of the the vision of the applicant, because they're really just focused on their own project. But in this case, I think, I can get behind, that request to waive that ADA easement on the driveway. We don't want to encumber that. We want to maintain as much parking as we can on site. So, I think for that reason, I would be in favor of that, and as a planning commissioner, I think that would be, a reasonable request. Other than that, Bart, I really don't have much more else to add. If something comes up, I'll let you know.
Very good. You'll have an opportunity. Zen. Commissioner Wu, you there?
Yes, I just unmuted myself, sorry. Overall, I think it is a good package. I agree with Michael on that assessment. I like it. So I'm going to focus on just a few remaining issues. First, the easy one, sidewalk. I would support the engineer's recommendation that we require the easement. In my viewpoint, the ADA civil rights law trumps all things. And we have those specific findings to waive a sidewalk. If the planning commission is not in a position I went through that list. It does not qualify for it. But if the city manager can make that finding or city council can make that determination, leave it to them. At the planning commission level, for me, I wouldn't be able to make the finding to support the waiver of the easement. That's an easement, that's a sidewalk. The idea is that eventually the sidewalk will connect, the dots will connect to become a line. So if someone doesn't want to do it, then the neighbor does it in the future, and then we ought to waive the one for your portion. We're never going to have a continuous sidewalk. So that's that. For the continuation of the setback, for minor exception permit, because of the historical building, my understanding is that the non-conforming chapter does not apply. So in other words, the notion that we should not increase the non-conformity, that doesn't apply. So we come back to look at the finding required for minor exception permit. One of the finding is, there are three findings. The second finding reads, the neighboring properties will not be adversely affected as a result of approval or conditional approval of the minor exception permit. So for that assessment, I really don't know. I walk the site, I see the neighboring property, which, so the neighbor needs to, it's my recommendation that the applicant or the staff reach out to the neighbor, not just the public notice, but reach out to them, ask them to either support it or not to object to it, because you never know what is this going to do the neighbor. Maybe they perceive it as an encroachment into their views to something. Natural lighting, natural ventilation, whatever that is, when we comply with the zoning by text code, they cannot challenge anything of that. But when you get into the required setback zone, I think neighbors should have a voice on the table. If they don't perceive it as a negatively impacted, we can get behind it. But at this moment, I think I'm comfortable to support a 4-foot setback. I think the added benefit of that wall plane break is to differentiate the addition from the existing historical structure. Now, one of the defining feature of the side elevation is the gable end wall plane or roof. The addition takes out a portion of that gable end. Look, I understand it's on the rear. It's actually not on the rear half of the lot, but on the rear side of the existing structure. But if the building were to have a wall plane break and it's visually separated from the existing historical building and keep that gable end well, it's going to be very, very narrow, tight rake type of thing. But if you leave it there, I think more historic defining feature will remain, which is also a good thing. So that's on the setback. And then last and a minor comments on the landscaping is that the Angel's Trumpet is a toxic plant. Someone touches it, put their family into the mouth, they're gonna be poisoned. So I think it's, you know, they look great, but they smells, it's a unique smell. But I'm a little concerned about the public safety of putting Angel's Trumpet next to the sidewalk. So I recommend that we replace that plant with something that doesn't pose any potential hazard to the public health. That's all my comments for now.
Okay, very good. I will say that as far as the sidewalk's concerned, I think we need to get the engineering department's recommendation and honor what Zach's saying. We just had another project, not historic, that had some issues with the ADA access around the apron, and we found it was very difficult to justify not doing an ADA. So I want to make sure that the powers that be here, we're just making a recommendation, but I would say that engineering's recommendation, I believe, is appropriate. As far as the minor exception permit for the building itself, I think Jen did a good job of understanding these going to 4 feet. I'd like the city to make sure there's a good interpretation of that ordinance and its application. We're talking 6 inches, so it's not a big change to the building, and you can justify it as being a part of the historic building and then part of the remodel. So there's a good delineation between the two. And on the garage, and I apologize to the consultant here, and I'll let her chime in one more time since we kind of stepped on her comments. I just want to make sure that the Mills Act is totally satisfied with this approach, because I think on the drawings it shows that the ADU may come in the future. And I don't quite know how that works. So I want to make sure that the Mills Act is very clear that maybe, and the whole comment I had was, if we took the Mills Act and did not make that requirement on the garage and put it somewhere else, just with a simple change of tasks to be accomplished, he can do the 50% tear down, the remodel to the potting area and small ADU just by the regular code. But if staff decides that's not necessary, they're the ones who implement that portion of the Mills Act, so be it. But I'm very pleased. I think as far as what we're tasked here today is, can we support with our recommendation the cultural heritage permit? I can do that. Can I support the exception permit with additional review and in the staff report having a section that describes how it's been applied and so forth to keep it at the 3.6 versus 4 foot. And the demolition permit, I think, just goes with the project, and I don't feel there's any problem with that. So I can support it being moved on, but I do think the additional information will be needed in the staff report at the next level. Does the historic consultant want to chime in on my comments?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Crandall. I simply just wanted to answer your question about whether it would comply, the partial demolition of the garage would comply with the requirements of the Mills Act contract. In my opinion, it does. The item number 19 actually specifies that the garage should be either A, fully restored, or demolished with approval, or unless an addition is added onto the garage. So I think the intent was really to make sure that the garage was rehabilitated in some way because of the structural deficiency, which again can be observed just from looking at the interior construction of the garage. So I think that this would certainly satisfy those requirements, and by keeping the two walls, you also are preserving the footprint of the building. And although it is not necessarily historic because it was constructed later, keeping those two walls does retain the history of the project and property, and changes to the property over time. So that's all I wanted to say, but thank you.
Thank you very much. David, if you can do it, I would think that would be an appropriate item to have documented in the staff report or the minutes of this meeting, so the reviewing commissioners have that information to make the decision on. But I can justify moving this project along, or recommending it move along. So,
but same for me, and I want to add a comment on the garage. I think the language does give the applicant a wider latitude to what to do with the garage, either a conversion or demolition or combination of addition, demolishing or conversion. So I think what the applicant is proposing to do is okay in terms of the contract on the historic preservation. At the same time, I support the staff's recommendation to reduce the wing wall. The report indicates that portion of the structure has no historical significance. So there's really no need to this wall to stay. The wall has added benefit of providing some more privacy than the fence to the yard, but I would support David's recommendation to reduce it.
agreed. Michael, would you like to chime in one more time? Well, I think we're in concurrence, David, that this should move along with that additional information being provided in your staff report and minutes of this meeting. And I think it will be, I'm glad, thank you very much to the applicant, by the way, for jumping in and taking the responsibility to complete the Mills Act improvements. That alone is huge, and we appreciate it very, very much.
We appreciate and commend every property owner with a historical property comes to us, propose some refinements and the restoration, preservation of the property. So thank you.
Commissioner Crandall, can I don't know if I missed it, but can you guys speak to the recommendations we have here on the screen? Are we in agreement?
As long as the applicant is agreeable to them, I was agreeable to those myself.
Okay.
We're fine with those conditions.
Very good. Would you agree, Jen and Michael, that the conditions that David had outlined in the report are to the benefit of the project, and that we agree with those?
Yes, of course. I'd like to add one more
Are you asking
recommendation.
if I would agree with you?
One more recommendation that the staff or applicant reach out to the neighbor to find out their position on the reduced setback. So that will help us to make the finding for minor exception permit item B, the neighboring property will not be adversely affected.
Very good. And Michael, yes.
Just we spoke at the same time. You were asking if I agree with you, and I do.
Very good. So congratulations to the applicant. Thank you, David, for doing a good report and getting the experts involved, and to the applicant also getting the experts involved to assist in this review. And thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item is new business. We have none. Old business, we have none. And written communications, we have none. And we do have one more meeting this month.
Commissioner Crandall, I do, if you don't mind me interjecting, the next meeting is actually going to be canceled due to a lack of business. So for that reason, this will be the last DRSC meeting with the current makeup of the subcommittee.
Well, then let's go back and reopen new business. And I just want to say that it was a joy working with Jen and Mike on these projects. They brought good perspective on every project we had. Like I say, we didn't always agree on things, but that's the whole point of these groups and review bodies, that you get differing opinions. But it always was to the benefit of the project in all cases, and you will be missed sorely. So thank you very much for your time, and we will do this again at the planning.
Thank you, Bart, and thank you, staff. And I hope that I trust you that you will continue to promote a good quality design and hold the applicant and the city itself to a high standard.
And we will try to keep the legacy going. So do we have a motion for adjournment? And we don't know the date that we're adjourning to, Stephanie?
Well, tentatively, the next meeting date would be, let me just pull that up. The next regularly scheduled design review subcommittee meeting is on July 14th.
Okay, so if we could adjourn to that meeting, that would be the motion. Michael,
Hey, Bart,
Yeah.
before we do that, I apologize. I'm on a really bad internet connection at this point in the meeting. I've transferred it over to a bad, but I did hear the majority of what you said. And yeah, I appreciate everything you said and agree. It's been a real pleasure. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with you guys and you know, the members of staff that are in this meeting as well. I've expressed that to Stephanie in the past, and David, you two are phenomenal, and Bart and Zen, out of all this, and just such a high bar. And you guys are top quality. The city is very fortunate to have had us all together for as long as they did. And I'm glad you're still doing this part.
well, we
Keep it up as long as you can.
worked well together. So, and I mean, it always was
We did.
to do the best job we could. So that's great.
Indeed.
Well, we
That's what it's all
finally
about.
got 3 professionals, design professionals on the board. I think this is the most productive period of the design review subcommittee.
We will certainly hopefully get those
Totally
to
agree.
the design review committee. We have some architects. We've got some with great planning expertise and whatnot. So if all goes well, we will continue as we have in the past. So
Yep.
Michael, would you like to make the motion tonight? And it was to the date July 14th.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the design review subcommittee standing committee adjourn to the next meeting of July 14th, 2021.
Second,
We have a motion by Backwell, second by Wu. We'll take a head count. Commissioner Wu,
aye.
Commissioner Blackwell,
Aye.
And Commissioner Crandall votes aye, passes 3-0. And thank you again, and thank you, Stephanie, for keeping us in line.
Hey, a quick question. How do you approve this minute?
Okay, I'm just trying
don't
to
know
end the
how-
recording.
I don't know how we do that.